Hey, rock stars, it's time to elevate your workspace. At Work Office Furniture has been transforming offices across North America for over 40 years with premium furniture and expert design solutions. Whether you need adjustable desks, office pods, or a complete workspace overhaul, At Work has everything to help you create a space that drives success. The Business Development Podcast Studio has relied on At Work from the start, and their products have been nothing short of extraordinary. But At Work isn't just about furniture. It's about crafting environments where business thrives. Their expert team designs workspaces and maximizes productivity, comfort, and creativity. Rodney from At Work says it best.
At Work's been in business for over 40 years now, and we're growing across Canada and beyond because we take care of people. We don't just sell office furniture, we make sure it works. It's fast and hassle-free.
At Work is on the move, bringing high-quality office furniture and expert design solutions to more businesses than ever. Whether upgrading a home office or outfitting a corporate space, At Work delivers and installs your ideal workspace anywhere in North America. A well-designed office is an investment in your success. Visit atwork.ca, that's atwork.ca, to explore their incredible range and transform your workspace today. At Work Office Furniture, empowering entrepreneurs to create, thrive, and design their futures. Welcome to episode 214 of the Business Development Podcast, and today we're diving into the world of legal innovation with Brett Colvin, the co-founder and CEO of Goodlawyer. Brett saw firsthand the inefficiencies of traditional legal services and set out to build a smarter, more accessible way for businesses to get legal support. His journey from big law firm associate to tech founder is nothing short of inspiring. Stick with us. You are not going to want to miss this episode.
The great Mark Cuban once said, "Business happens over years and years. Value is measured in the total upside of a business relationship, not by how much you squeezed out in any one deal." And we couldn't agree more. This is the Business Development Podcast, based in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and broadcasting to the world. You'll get expert business development advice, tips and experiences, and you'll hear interviews with business owners, CEOs, and business development reps. You'll get actionable advice on how to grow business. Brought to you by Capital Business Development, capitalbd.ca. Let's do it. Welcome to the Business Development Podcast. And now your expert host, Kelly Kennedy.
Hello, welcome to episode 214 of the Business Development Podcast. And for today's expert guest interview, I am bringing you Brett Colvin. Brett is a pioneering force in the legal tech industry, serving as the co-founder and CEO of Goodlawyer. With over 4 years of experience as a corporate lawyer at Canada's largest law firm, Brett witnessed firsthand the inefficiencies and frustrations that plague traditional legal services. Motivated by a vision to create a more efficient and accessible legal ecosystem, he left the conventional path and in 2019 began reimagining legal services from his kitchen table. Under his leadership, Goodlawyer has grown into a formidable team of over 20 employees and 140 plus lawyers, delivering innovative legal solutions to over 5,000 clients across Canada. Goodlawyer, with its unique fractional GC and fractional in-house services, is revolutionizing the legal landscape by offering flexible, part-time legal expertise tailored to the specific needs of businesses. This groundbreaking approach, combined with transparent, flat-rate pricing, has earned Brett and Goodlawyer several prestigious accolades, including the Small Business of the Year Award by the Calgary Chamber and recognition as Canada's 35th top growing business by Globe and Mail. Brett Colvin's journey from corporate lawyer to visionary CEO is a testament to his unwavering commitment to making legal services far more efficient and accessible. In Brett Colvin, the legal industry has not just found a disruptor, but a true innovator dedicated to transforming how lawyers and businesses collaborate. Brett, it's an honor to have you on the show.
Kelly, that was a hell of an intro, and happy to be here, my friend.
Thank you very much. You're doing a hell of a job, let me just say.
Well, the one note I got to give you is we're over 170 lawyers in the network now.
Holy cow. My information is out of date. Congratulations. That's unreal. My gosh, we talked about this. At this point, we started communicating, I think, back in May. So we're recording right now. It's it's July 19th. So it's been a few months since we initially chatted. But dude, I've been excited to have this conversation with you. You're right in Calgary, which is super cool.
Yeah, no, I'm happy, looking forward to this as well, my friend. And, if we can be growing as fast as this podcast, then we're doing something right.
Amazing. I mean, you guys are doing pretty damn well. I'm just going to say, we're going to chat about the yacht party because that sounded pretty awesome. But before we get into that today, I just wanted to say we've only ever had one other legal expert on this show. We had Steve Monk from CEO Law come on quite a while ago. Like, I want to say at this point, probably somewhere around 150 episodes ago. So it's been a minute since we've talked law on the Business Development Podcast. But you know what? It's important, and it's something that, frankly, many of us business owners struggle to understand, me included, about, when do we need it? What do we need it for? What are the situations that we should be considering getting some legal support? And what are situations that we're going through it and we don't even know we need help, right? Like, there's so much there. Plus, you went from lawyer to essentially tech founder, which is also super cool. And I just want to chat about all of that today. But before we get into it, who is Brett Colvin? How did you end up on this path?
Brett Colvin is my brother and my mother are both psychologists, and we played like a quasi personality game over the holidays a while back. And you basically land on the animal that is most like you with the attributes. And I landed as a peacock and badger, which felt pretty appropriate. Yeah, I mean, I've always been a little entrepreneur growing up. Started selling golf balls when I was 4, and started running landscaping businesses, rolled that into a painting franchise before law school, and always just loved business, loved cutting deals, loved building a team, and just really knew from a pretty early age that I had a passion for entrepreneurship, for building a business that, frankly, I would say is a little bit unconventional in the world of law, which is definitely a more conservative space and, can be very lucrative, but definitely lacking in, I would say, true entrepreneurs, because not many of us are willing to go to school for 7 years. And then also just a lack of innovation, which I have, perceived from very early in my legal career can be attributed to just the incentive models and how things in the more conventional, traditional law firm structure is set up. And I'm a big believer in incentives. And when you don't have the incentives to innovate, why innovate? And, I think that's why there's this huge opportunity for Goodlawyer to change the dynamic for businesses and lawyers alike and provide something that, offers more flexibility and more freedom than ever before.
Agreed. And, I feel like when I chatted with Steve, he had mentioned too that like he had seen a lot of challenges with law firms and frankly with lawyers, and just struggling with everybody being unhappy. Like, the law firms weren't happy, the lawyers weren't happy, the customers weren't happy. Like, it was this like mess of unhappiness. Can we just chat? Like, this is so long ago since I talked to Steve. Can we just chat about it? What is the state of corporate law in Canada right now?
Well, I might start with saying that it's more profitable than ever before. So there's definitely folks at the sort of top of the pyramid making lots of money. And, for, I think, certain personalities, it is a really good fit. The problem I see is that it forces everyone down the exact same path. Certainly in the big law firms, in-house is definitely a bit more varied, but in that big corporate law context, your first 10 years, you are there to take orders and bill hours and hit targets. And then, if you stick around long enough, one day, you become the mythical equity partner, and then you can start making money by bringing in business. The problem with that often is that first 10 years, nobody is really prioritizing you bringing in business. And then all of a sudden, there's this new expectation to, be a rainmaker. And again, what I saw when I was there, maybe that path is ideal for a small subset of the lawyers that, I worked with, that I started my career with. But there was a majority who I know from, the friendships and very intimate conversations I've had with many folks that charted a similar path in those early days, that are, disillusioned and not excited to pursue this career. And, I think our COO, Josh, is a great example. He was the picture perfect big law corporate lawyer. And, when I left in 2019, they said, "See you later, crazy entrepreneur." When I managed to recruit him and convince him to join the Goodlawyer journey a couple of years later, the firm definitely wept a little more, because he was sort of the epitome of what, the leaders in the firm were looking for in their future leaders. And everyone's money was Josh being managing partner one day. But I think him leaving and joining us is just a huge statement, a reflection on that path not being, maybe all it's cracked up to be for most of us. And, our mission is to build the most desirable way to practice law, and really have this intense focus on delivering a new experience, a new career opportunity for lawyers that, are incredible practitioners, but maybe didn't want to, slave away 60, 80 hours a week for the next 20 years, or, move into a full-time in-house role that felt like they were not fully utilizing their skill sets, and trying to provide this in-between option that provide them tremendous flexibility, especially for lawyers that, want to raise their kids, want to travel, maybe have older parents they got to take care of, just providing something that isn't all or nothing. And, we have lawyers on the fractional side of things that, are absolutely crushing it and have a desire to work as hard as they can and make as much money as they can. And, we're happy to support that. But we also have lawyers that, they're looking for something more flexible, maybe a couple of days a week that, allows them to be super mom and a really good lawyer. And it's not this all or nothing sort of scenario anymore. So that's a little bit of color on the big firm experience. And then the final thing I'll just mention is, I was probably the only associate at the firm that was doing the, frankly, pretty simple math to say, I'm billing out as a fourth year at $550. If I look at my paycheck and I run the math, I'm putting about $65 in my pocket. Where's the rest of it going? And, I love the Bezos line, like, your margin is my opportunity. And that is a lot of margin to play with.
Totally. Yeah, I can imagine when you're looking at that, you're probably feeling a little bit taken advantage of in that moment.
Yeah. I mean, in that circumstance, I mean, lawyers are certainly well paid, but they earn it, a little different than maybe the iBankers, who I know work hard too, but the payday is way bigger, especially in the early days. Big law corporate lawyers, they earn those dollars, especially in the early years. And again, it's just like a license to bill. And that was not how I wanted to approach my life and my career and my contribution. I could not stand the fact that, my life was sort of delineated into 6-minute intervals, and there was no room for creativity or, innovation. And I felt incredibly caged in that environment. And that's what we're trying to really rectify here on our Goodlawyer journey.
I love it. And I can't wait to explore that more with you. Really what I want to know though, I think from an outside view, we don't know. We have no idea as a non-lawyer, looking at a lawyer might as well be looking at a doctor. You don't have a good understanding of what it is they're doing. Can you maybe just run us through what is a day in the life of a lawyer? What does that look like? It sounds to me like it's crazy busy.
I mean, there's no way to really answer that question, because there's so many different varieties. Even within, the 170 lawyers that are practicing through Goodlawyer now, there's such a insane variety of what those lawyers are doing on the day-to-day basis. I mean, in the, if I track back to my time in the big firm, you're getting in at 8:30, fully suited. You're going into your office, you're closing the door, you're crushing 10, 12 hours hopefully you're billing most of those. And then, you're going home and you're coming back the next day and rinse and repeating. Maybe not overly surprisingly, I was probably the most social butterfly at the firm. So my utilization was definitely lower than most because I was building and developing relationships. But, for most folks, it was come in, close the door, bill the hours, go home, come back, do it again. And then the third bucket being like the full-time in-house lawyers. That also, I would say, looks a lot way different than full-time big law private practice, and quite a bit different than the fractional offering we have, which again provides more flexibility, but also more variability in the types of clients that you're working with, because you have a few on your plate as opposed to just one that you're serving as a full-time employee. And in the in-house realm, such a wide variety of what those roles look like. But I think being a general counsel or an AGC or a senior legal leader in a cool business is a really rewarding experience, because you don't just focus on the law like you would in private practice. It's not all about the law. It's about the law and its intersection with the business. And, that's why the folks that we're recruiting for fractional, 95% of the time have been in-house, have been GCs, and understand what it means to, move the business forward with a legal lens attached to it, as opposed to, writing 10-page memos that highlight every risk under the sun.
Yeah. My gosh. Like, that sounds like incredibly challenging. Did you ever experience burnout? Like, to me, that seems like a recipe for burnout, man. Like, that seems very, very challenging.
Not really. I would say that I experienced boredom more than burnout. To be honest, I've always been a hard worker. I definitely got a major grinder element to me, and I love working if I believe in the thing that I'm working on. So whether it was running that painting franchise before law school and obsessing every time I'm driving down the street, looking at every house, being like, that guy needs a paint job, that guy needs a paint job, to building Goodlawyer, where, I don't really have a work-life balance, because it's all, it's more of that work-life harmony where it's all kind of fused together. And that works really well for me, because I'm so passionate and have such a great team building this thing that didn't really exist before. So for me, it wasn't the hours, it wasn't the grind, it was the lack of inspiration and the feeling that my only job was really to punch in those 0.1s and those 6-minute intervals, and that just wasn't quite doing it for me.
Yeah. I can totally understand that too. And it's a completely different animal when it's your baby, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, I think there's something about running your own business that gives you a motivation unlike anything you've ever had before. And, we can chat about that, but take me back to 2019, man. Like, take me back to that. You're a lawyer at a big firm, at one of Canada's largest firms. And man, like, you're going to go out on your own. Like, that must have been a really hard decision for you to make. Like, you'd like you said, went to school for 7 years. You'd already earned your keep at this organization, and now you're just gonna sit. Like, I could see that being a incredibly, incredibly challenging choice. Talk to me about that.
It wasn't. It honestly wasn't that hard to make.
Wow.
I think the timing of it was a little bit stressful, but there was just such a degree of certainty that I couldn't build the future for myself, or, the impact I was going to have within that context. The final straw for me, because I'd been noodling this Goodlawyer idea for a long time. And within the firm, I was unaffectionately known as Mr. Ideas Guy, which I can assure you was not a compliment. And I did try numerous times to put forward, I'd say varying degrees of difficulty, but put forward ideas that I thought could, serve our clients better, serve our lawyers within the firm better, whether it was mentorship, whether it was different incentive models, whether it was just using like the tiniest amount of technology to automate the most mundane aspects of my job. And I was either not responded to with those ideas at all or shut down. And it just got to a point where I was certainly feeling frustrated. And again, from I think the firm and the big dog partners perspective, a little bit too big for my britches as a, young associate trying to share all of these ideas to the guys that have been around the block for a long time. And really the final straw for me that I was getting to was one of the senior guys, effectively my boss, coming in my office one day and slamming the door and just saying, "Brett, keep coming up with your ideas. Just keep them to yourself." And
wow.
That was kind of like the last straw. So I knew at that moment, I was like, all right, they don't even want to hear the ideas anymore. I really got to seriously start planning my exit. And, it didn't happen immediately, but it was about 6 months later, I was able to raise a little bit of dough from my first investor. And, I found my two original co-founders. Grant came on later, but Tom and Parker, a developer and a designer, kind of like the Airbnb trio. And it was about 6 months later that I quit my job, got the dough in a Goodlawyer bank account, and started plugging away at as you noted in the intro, the kitchen table with my co-founders, and we haven't looked back since.
That's amazing, dude. That's amazing. Talk to me though, like what gave you the idea for Goodlawyer? Obviously law had been done a certain way for a very, very long time. Bringing technology to it, essentially creating Goodlawyer, going to a fractional system. Like I had not even heard of that before a couple years ago. Like to me, it seems like a very new idea. How were you able to come up with this idea?
Well, I would say that that's kind of like a series of compounding ideas. So I'll tell you the name story in a second, but we didn't start with fractional. Fractional is really something that emerged close to 2 years ago in our business. And it started rolling and we jumped on it full force because it was such a different and valuable offering for the right type of customer or the right type of client. So, if there's any startup founders, listening, you can call it a pivot, but I conceive of it in my mind more as an evolution, because I don't think we've really totally pivoted away from what we were doing in the early days, but it really has evolved and become the priority for the business, developing this fractional GC and fractional in-house offering, because it just serves the lawyers that we're on a mission to help the best. It provides them a level of stability and security that they're looking for. And on the client side, it's just this like 10x offering in the right circumstance, where you can have a senior in-house lawyer who used to work at the big firm and then worked in-house in your industry come in and, for a couple $100 an hour instead of $1,000 an hour, really become an extension of your executive team and provide you this in-house legal muscle that you just didn't have before. And, Business Development Podcast, I would say one of the most common places where we're placing fractional GCs today is where you have a company doing a ton of larger and larger and faster enterprise sales contracts. And it gets to a point where sending those contracts out to the firm or getting your CFO to review them just becomes untenable. And slotting in a lawyer that can help you close deals faster on better terms becomes, less of a cost center and more of an, opportunity unlock that, drives a tremendous amount of value for these technology scale-ups and mid-market companies that we're working with. If I jump back where Goodlawyer started, I bought the domains, like the website and the name and everything, back in first year law school, which is like a decade ago. I didn't know what it was going to be for yet, but that's where it came from. My old coffee guy, be a good lawyer, he said, and it stuck. And really the original idea was so simple: fixed fee, transparent, small business legal services. And then that turned into much larger projects, and then that rolled into fractional eventually. But really that was the idea on day one, was, having run the paying franchise and learned how to estimate services, and getting to law and having this sort of wild experience of nobody estimating anything and just hitting the clock. I'll send you the bill later. It just didn't make any sense to me. Watching a lawyer hire a lawyer, by the way, is a pretty funny experience. But really that was the premise, was let's provide more cost effective and even more importantly, upfront, transparent pricing for the legal services, because as the service providers, as the lawyers, we should know how long something's going to take, give or take. We should understand, like, what the spectrum of pricing should look like better than the client who, I don't like the term non-lawyer, but then the non-lawyer. And, I think from a risk sharing perspective, the expert should be able to take on more risk than the non-expert, in this case, than the client. And what I think a lot of lawyers don't realize is the friction associated with the way that they deliver and bill services, billable hours, prevents a lot of people from hiring them and leaves a terrible taste in their mouth post. So that was the original idea, was just, let's build a marketplace predicated on fixed fee legal services at better rates. Let's cut the law firm out, because then we can strip out all of that margin, all of that overhead I alluded to earlier. And let's provide a better legal experience for these, businesses that are moving fast and need that legal expertise. And at the same time, let's provide a new avenue for these independent lawyers who, cut their teeth in places like I did, but have, decided to pursue a more entrepreneurial sort of career themselves, and let's support them in that endeavor.
My gosh, yeah, I love it, dude. I absolutely love it. And from a business standpoint, at least being able to have an idea, and I get it, not every project goes to plan. And not every project goes to plan in any organization or any industry or any business. And so there are probably going to be caveats where it doesn't go exactly to plan and the quote isn't exactly perfect, but it's still great to know that this is probably most likely what you are looking at. And I feel like you're right. It's like, in my experiences of dealing with lawyers throughout my life, it has been, I don't know, right? Like, this is our rate per hour. We're going to get to this and we're going to do it as long as it takes to get it done. And yeah, you're right. From like a standpoint of a buyer of that service, it's like, okay, this sucks. I only want to do this if I have no other choice. So being able to like clarify and say, like, here's the cost we think it will be. Obviously, there's always caveats. There's always situations that go a little longer or maybe a little shorter, but it's still good to at least know that number, know what you're getting yourself into. So I think, dude, like, just from like a business standpoint, you were already on the right path. And I don't know why, like, it seems silly to me that all lawyers are not looking at it from this standpoint at this point.
Well, I mean, imagine the plumber coming over to your house to fix your toilet, and he just closes the door and he's like, I'm going to let you know how much it costs when I'm done. Like, it's just lunacy. There's almost no other service where it's just a blank check. Tell me how much it is later. And, again, for if you're a good, experienced lawyer and, you work with businesses or you work with startups, whatever, and you've done, 1,000 shareholders agreements in the past, why can't you pick a price that, you're going to make some money on, and it might be a little more or a little less, for the time you're putting in, because there's always a little bit of variation. And, in the construction industry and in a lot of different service industries, we have something very effective at dealing with wild scope changes, and it's called a change order. And, if there's a wild scope change, then you can provide a change order. Yeah. Everybody can agree to the scope change, the change order, and you carry on your merry way. But when you have huge projects, billion-dollar projects that are getting quoted, the idea that a lawyer can't give you a quote on a shareholders agreement for, a 3-person business, to me was completely insane, and frankly, just like a lazy approach to business. And, you don't have to have a business degree to go to law. And I'd say that, a bunch do, but many folks that, are in big law and private practice are incredibly smart people.
Yeah.
But they've never been taught a whole lot about business. And, there's already this sort of risk adverse nature to your average lawyer kind of built in. It's also, what lawyers are kind of there to do, which is to mitigate risk. But it goes over the top when it comes to how many, not all, but many lawyers service their clients. And, I didn't view it as sort of a negative for the business, obviously, providing fixed fee quotes. I viewed it as this huge opportunity because there was an appetite for it in the market. there was an appetite for good lawyers at good prices and with a level of transparency that, frankly, I was stunned not to see when I arrived in the profession, almost a decade ago.
Yeah. Yeah. No, like it makes a ton of sense. I guess the challenge that I see, and I want to chat with you about it, is obviously if classic law firms are doing things the same way, they're incredibly profitable, blank checks, right? On a certain level, wouldn't a lawyer be better off to work for them long term than to work for someplace like Goodlawyer? And just hear me out on this. I'm not trying to like knock anything. I'm just trying to say the way that you're doing it is the right way, no question. But it's clearly the hard way too. It's clearly the more challenging route to take. And doing fractional, I imagine, being a little bit more challenging to kind of keep it all rolling. Can you chat a little bit about what your incentives have been to the lawyers to get them on your team?
Yeah, I mean, I've got enormous, probably like your podcast, lineup of lawyers that want to join the Goodlawyer network. And I think that is a reflection of, the brand we've built, the services and the experiences that we're delivering for lawyers and clients. But fundamentally, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, which is there's one track in the big firm. There's one track, and that track is hitting your, 2,000 billable hours a year for a decade, and then being brought into the infamous partnership and, starting to be at the top of the pyramid and starting to be able to extract some of that value that you were putting in for years and years. And, again, when I look at the breakdown of even what equity partners take on the work that they do, I would say, and, don't fully quote me on this because this is more anecdotal from many, many, many conversations I've had with lawyers, but your lawyers in the big firms are taking typically, if you're a junior associate, 15 to 20% of their billable rate goes into their pocket. And it's all roundabout, right? Because you're on a salary, you have a target to hit. And so it's not like you bill an hour and then you get to take that 65, 70 bucks out of it. But if you just run the math, it's so simple. What's my salary? What's my bonus? How many hours I bill? Divide that. Boom. That is your effective unit rate, your take of every hour you're billing. And for an associate in a big firm, you're looking at 15 to 20% you're keeping. More senior partners, you're probably looking at, keeping 30% of that. And where the senior guys make all the money is on originating new work and then getting the benefit of being the rainmaker and getting, there's 80%, 85% margin there on the associate time. So some of that has to go to the rainmaker, some of that goes to the firm, and then some of that goes to just excessive amounts of overhead. And, I think if you asked the managing partners of the firms around town how much they're spending on their lease, like they would be a little bit red in the face to tell you how much they're dropping on that, not to mention the paintings and all the good stuff.
Okay. No, that makes a lot more sense. So essentially, if the lawyers come and work for you, either way, they're making a better margin than they ever could at a larger firm.
Way better. But I think the kicker is that, but because we flip that on its head. So instead of us keeping 80-85, the lawyers keeping 80-85. So what that does is it changes the whole pricing dynamic. And with fractional, it's amazing because we're able to embed people in like huge blocks, multiple days a week. But really the value that we're offering to lawyers is an ability to make really good money in whatever way fits their life. So again, if you're in the firm, you can make a lot of money, no question about it. But there's sort of a minimum requirement that is a very big requirement. And the phrase that you'll hear all the time if you're working in a big firm, it's the golden handcuffs. And it's this idea that, you start making more and more money. You can't really conceive of how you could make more money elsewhere. You might be discontent, but then you buy the house, then you buy the car, and now you're locked in because you have no idea how you could make $300,000-400,000 grand in any other sort of avenue. But to make that, again, you're working 60 hours a week and you're giving up your weekends. You're not at your kid's recital. Like You just give up so much to get that paycheck. And if you look at the economics on that paycheck, 80% of that value is going to the rainmaker and the firm, and just chopping that dynamic up completely and creating a situation where, all of these lawyers who don't want that because there's more to their lives, they want to pursue or support or do other things. That avenue just didn't really exist. And a crazy stat is roughly half of lawyers that start, a career in the profession leave. And at some point in the first 5 years, I can't remember if it was 5 or 10 years, but they're gone. Half of lawyers exit the profession because they've had enough. And these are in many cases like incredibly talented practitioners. And we provided an opportunity to bring some of those folks back and catch some of them before they leave.
My God. Yeah, that's huge. That, like, to me, that's definitely a leading indicator that there's something seriously wrong.
I don't think half of doctors stop being doctors,
No. And like, man, I couldn't imagine making that choice. Like you said, like the time commitment just to becoming a lawyer. What did you say, 7 years? Yeah, walking away from that is like walking away from a quarter of your life.
And I mean, we just had a nice milestone a couple of days ago. We had our first lawyer who started with us about 3 years ago, hit $1 million just over the platform.
Wow.
I've got lawyers making $250,000 in Costa Rica, working 30 hours a week. And $250,000 goes really, really far in Costa Rica. And the funniest part is that the clients that they're working with are saving an insane amount of money. So you have this situation where lawyers can make great dough, clients can save an insane amount, and Goodlawyer, because we're very long-term oriented, can make enough to sustain the business and keep propelling us forward. Because for us, it's all about scalability and building something really big, really fast. And I don't need to take 80% to do that. I can be significantly fair, more transparent, and we can build an incredible business that is, really driven by technology and efficiency in a way that, I think would probably bewilder a lot of the folks at the firms.
well, you showed them, dude.
Again, I really do think that there is a place for the big firms, and this, kind of bringing up Josh again, really opened my eyes to, and where we excel and where they excel. And for us, I feel less competitive with the big firms than ever before, because the focus of our business today is really embedding that in-house legal talent. And no lawyer at any firm would really perceive the general counsel of, one of their institutional clients as a competitor. That is their best client. And we are embedding senior legal talent in an in-house way that, to me, is really targeted at the bulk of run and grow the business legal work. Whereas the firms make the big bucks, the highest margins, and the work they want to do is typically or almost always predicated on the big transactions and the big disputes. So if you're doing, your IPO, or you're doing this $100 million M&A transaction, I'm going to send you to my old buddies at one of the big shops, because that is what they are built to do. Same thing. If there's a huge dispute, I'm sending that to one of my buddies at a different shop who, is the best litigator in town in this area, because that is not our focus. But when you have an overwhelming amount of legal need internally, because you're signing contracts, you're hiring people, you're in a regulated environment, that is the stuff where having a lawyer really close to the business, to your product team, to your sales guy, like that is where an in-house lawyer really thrives, and where we've been really orienting, our solutions over the last couple of years.
Yeah, let's lead into it. So what is Goodlawyer? Like, who are your ideal clients? What is the service offering? Run us through it.
Goodlawyer today is Canada's leader in fractional legal talent, and we are starting to dip our toes into the US market. But really where we specialize and where we are sort of, I think, leading the way is taking former big law, ideally with in-house experience. So, they cut their teeth like I did in the big firm, because I do think that is like not ideal, but a pretty intense training ground. And then they've, continued to develop their skills within a business, ideally a high growth business, and have really learned how to not just be technical, but also to be practical when it comes to understanding business priorities and risk tolerance and things like that. And so for us, being the best place for those types of lawyers to come and thrive, that is what we are all about today, and embedding those guys and gals into companies on a part-time in-house way has been hugely valuable for the businesses that we're working with. And I think it's why fractional GC is growing so fast right now. There's some variance here a little bit, but if you're a company with 30, 50 up to 250, 300 employees, and you're spending over 50 grand on legal services, and you still have your CFO or your CEO or some executive reading contracts because you don't quite want to send them out, that is like our bread and butter, where let's put somebody in, let's reduce that overall legal spend, and more importantly, let's unlock your executives by taking away this legal portfolio that they don't really love managing, they weren't trained to manage, and frankly is taking them away from where their best use is for the business.
Perfect. Okay. I think I have a much better understanding of kind of how it works. In our earlier conversation, though, you had mentioned that like one of the big things that you have leveraged is technology. Can you run me through the technological aspects of Goodlawyer?
For sure. So I kind of talked about earlier the starting point for Goodlawyer, the fixed fee marketplace. So you can really think about Goodlawyer as two very closely tied business lines. Fixed fee marketplace, which I would say is the starting point for all the small businesses that we work with. They're not ready for, a fractional mandate that's like monthly recurring and I would say a significantly larger commitment. Fixed fee marketplace, you can come in and pretty much buy anything from, shareholders agreement, advice session, all the way up to, a small M&A transaction, things like that. So the marketplace is what serves projects and those earlier stage businesses. And we built a platform, for in an overly simplistic way, you can kind of picture it as like Airbnb for business legal services, fixed fee marketplace. And then on the other side, we're developing technology to help the fractional lawyers that are in our network run their business. So there are little touch points with the client on the fractional app, but it really is more of a productivity tool for fractional lawyers and for our operations team, because for us, we're not selling a SaaS service. We're selling a solution for everybody. And for the lawyer on the fractional side, that is the platform, and our operations team in the background and our account management team in the background, offloading a lot of the responsibilities that lawyers don't really like to do. Some of the client management, definitely the billing, the invoicing, the docketing, all that kind of stuff. So those are the two technology platforms that we've built and continue to iterate on every single day.
My gosh. What was it like? What was it like trying to develop these things, right? Like you came from a legal background. Obviously, you were an entrepreneur before that, but like you came from a legal background. What was it like to essentially start a tech company?
Hard.
I bet.
Yeah. And I think I would say, when I think of kind of my skills and where I thrive, sales, marketing, building the team, those are things that I would say are like in my wheelhouse. Building and designing a software platform, definitely outside of my core wheelhouse. So, in those early days, so fortunate to have, been able to bring on a couple co-founders who had the development and the design chops to get us off the ground. And, it is still, I don't want to call it a struggle, but it's still a really hard piece of the business trying to build great product. Yeah. And, for me, I mostly lean on the guys in my team who are better at it than me. And again, that's like an area where I think I've grown a lot in terms of understanding what good product looks like, and even more importantly, what good product process looks like. But really, I think, for anyone listening that, is more of the business mind in the business and less of the technical founder or co-founder, it really comes down to finding the right people to join you on the journey and really leaning and, empowering them to do what they're good at. So for me, startups are incredibly hard. I was ready for hard. I think I've been surprised how hard, and I think we've been pretty damn successful to date, and we still got a really long way to go. But I think it all comes back to the people you surround yourself with, and looking in the mirror and figuring out where are your gaps, and then finding the right people to join you to fill those gaps. And in the early days, all the way up to today, that development and design skill set is something that was a huge gap for me. And, just really thankful that I was able to bring on a couple early co-founders who could fill that void.
Yeah. Yeah. Have there been any other organizations like in Calgary that have been beneficial to helping you guys get rolling?
Oh man, so many. You mentioned it in the intro. The Chamber has been a huge supporter of us. Winning that Small Business of the Year award a couple years ago was definitely some wind in our sails. I think a ton of the scale ups in town that are further ahead, who we're so fortunate now to call our clients, have been hugely valuable. Not just the revenue and the logos that we're able to drive, but the relationships that I've been able to develop with the CEOs and executives of those companies. I'm sitting here in a boardroom at TELUS Sky right now. We share a floor with two of our clients who are run by two really good friends of mine, Bolster and Zayzoon, and they're both further along in their journey, and being able to extract lessons and learnings from folks that have done it before or a little further ahead has been so valuable, not just to me, but to folks throughout my team. And yeah, I think when we started Goodlawyer, back in 2019, we launched it in 2020, the Calgary startup scene looked a whole lot different. And to see where we've gotten it today is super encouraging. And, when I started Goodlawyer, I assumed that I would be moving to Toronto or San Fran or New York to build this thing eventually. And I don't feel like that anymore. I think Calgary is ripe. I think it's full of opportunity. And I think we might have caught the wave at sort of the perfect time, where there's unbelievable talent here, but it's still small enough that you can make a dent. And, that first yacht party we threw, Calgary Ec Dev getting behind it, joining us, turning it into the Calgary Ec Collision Party in Toronto, being this, big deal, despite being a tiny little company at the time, was something that I don't know if we could have done it had we been based in any other city.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Alberta is absolutely amazing. And
hey, I went to U of A. I spent 7 years in Edmonton. I love Edmonton too, my friend.
I love Calgary. I love Edmonton. I think that we are incredibly, incredibly blessed to live in this beautiful province. And it is one of the fastest growing tech sectors in the world. And it's due to people like you. It's due to innovators like you changing the world, dude. And it's amazing. And, one of the things that I really wanted to chat with you today, as a small business myself and knowing a ton of small business, I think many of us struggle with understanding how and when to engage a law firm, what we even necessarily need legal for. I think by the time a lot of small companies realize they need legal, we're already in trouble. Mm-hmm. Right. So can you maybe give us some advice today, Brett, to the small, medium-sized businesses out there, ones that maybe don't have legal on their team at all? They're not really sure. I think they're scooting through, hoping they won't need legal for as long as humanly possible. Do you have some advice for these people, or can you maybe give us a 101 on what we need to know?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's one of these things, and I hate to give you the lawyer answer that it depends. Depending on what your business is doing, what your aspirations are, the industry and context that you're building your business within, all have huge ramifications on whether you need to find a good lawyer, whether, template off Law Depot is sufficient. But the one thing that I will say is a common killer, and it's like the most unnecessary killer I see, especially in the startup space, but certainly not exclusively. It applies certainly in just any sort of small business context where you have multiple partners, multiple owners, and that is the shareholder structure, or, maybe I'll start with the founder context in a startup. The number one legal miss I see that could be detrimental, because that's the thing about law. A lot of the time, and lawyers are exceptionally good at this, you can fix things. If you do them wrong, you can often go back most of the time and fix them later. Maybe it'll be more expensive, but you can fix things. The struggle that I see that derails businesses unnecessarily is when, you've got, say, 3 co-founders, or you got 3 owners, and you have not created a situation. And in the startup context, I call it, a founder vesting agreement, which can be baked into other agreements, but that's the concept in a more traditional small business setting. Just, things like how does somebody exit in a fair way? And there are very, very few startups that, the original co-founding group is there for the entire journey. And
Sure.
What I have seen so many times, and we almost got snagged by this ourselves, despite, the name being Goodlawyer, we were able to rectify it. But when you start a startup, all the founders should be signing some agreement that has that founder vesting provision in it. And that effectively, and the typical sort of market timing is about, you'll vest in about 4 years. But basically, if you split it a third, and how you jig that is totally dependent on the circumstances, who's bringing what, but you get your equity. So you would get your third, and it would vest over a 4-year time horizon. So if you're there for a year, typically there's like a 1-year cliff, you get 25% of 33. So whatever that is, 9%. You get that after year 1, but after year 2, you get another 9 or 8, and so on. But what that does is, if somebody leaves along the way, then they stop vesting, and that equity returns to the company. And it's, I think, what everybody sort of expects. But if you don't delineate that in some sort of agreement, one of those co-founders could leave after 6 months, after a year, and they own a third of the company.
Yeah.
And when you have that type of dead weight on a cap table, especially if you ever want to go get investment, it's just so unmotivating and unfair. And I've seen companies that, are still early, but like starting to turn the corner, and they just die because somebody left. It's not fair. Now I'm building this business. We own the same. And it just creates this internal breakdown that was so avoidable with a simple founder vesting agreement. So
amazing. That's great advice.
That would be my number one. If I just had to give you one. That one's free, my friend.
No, that's amazing advice. And you're right. I think a lot of people, they go into it with good faith, hoping for the best, which I think as entrepreneurs, that's what most of us live our life based on. But yeah, shit happens, and you got to have a plan.
I know. And people also, again, in both the startup and more traditional small business sense, have this over certain belief that 51% is the be all end all. It can be, owning 51% can be, but really it comes down to what does your shareholders agreement say? Who are directors? What is like who controls, how do they control who owns, and how are decisions made at the shareholder level? And so, the contrast to maybe the founder vesting in the small business sense would be having an appropriate shareholder agreement in place is super important, and having provisions within it that, if the worst case scenario occurs, you really have to have that hard conversation in the early days when everything's groovy between you and your co-owners, your co-founders, because if you have the hard conversation, it provides an exit avenue that doesn't torch the business down the road. And so in a shareholder agreement, that could be a buyback provision. You know, if you get hit by a bus, does half the company, you know, go to your wife or your siblings, or, you know, or is there an automatic sort of way for the company to claw that back in? Because really what you're trying to avoid more than anything else is dead weight on the cap table.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And so like, this is something that companies should be figuring out really at the early stages, not when they're a year or 2 years in.
Sooner the better. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's amazing, dude. Can you talk about some of the other services that you guys offer through Goodlawyer? I know it's a wide range, but I know we have a lot of people from a wide range of companies listening. So can we just go over all the services that you offer?
Sure. So again, I'd say, you know, the flagship focus these days is embedding fractional general counsel into high growth technology companies, as well as mid-market companies in a wide variety of industries, from oil and gas, mining, insurance, health. Like, you know, we've got some sports teams that we're working with, wide variety of, you know, typically fast growing businesses that need that internal in-house legal function on a part-time basis. When it comes to more just like project-based or broad stroke practice areas, we do everything that a national law firm would, except big, hairy commercial litigation. So again, that would be one of those areas where if you came to me and you have this multi-million-dollar dispute, like, I'm sending you to pause over at my old firm. If you're going to be doing an IPO or your $100 million exit, you know, I'm sending you to Bodie over at another one. But if you're a small business and you need to incorporate and get your shareholder agreement in order, and, you know, maybe create the terms and privacy for your website, that is definitely something that we service all the time on the marketplace side of things. And so anything corporate commercial, anything governance related, employment, HR, my only caveat there is we don't do employees. We're totally focused on serving the entrepreneurs and the businesses. So, you know, building your HR program or your employment agreements, that kind of stuff, definitely in the wheelhouse. And then I would say one of our other areas that we're incredibly strong, because IP lawyers have a tendency to leave the firm because they don't need the leverage that it offers, is intellectual property. So trademarks, protecting your brand, protecting your logo, and patents. We have, you know, a bench on the IP front that I think can compete with any of the big firms in the country.
Amazing. Amazing. And you had mentioned the website. Are people able to order services through the marketplace on the website?
Yeah.
Perfect,
so
perfect.
yeah, if you go to goodlawyer.ca and you click the company drop down and click startups, that will take you to our funnel. Everyone that we're working with right now will have a touch point with somebody on our customer experience team to make sure, because getting that right fit is so important. So there will be a human in the loop to make sure we get you placed in the right spot. But yeah, all of the transactions and everything occur right on the platform. And, you know, we make it easy so you can keep going back to that lawyer, because, you know, re-educating a new lawyer every time is, you know, not good for anybody.
Of course. Dude, this has been amazing. If people want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Best way to find me is to hit me up on LinkedIn. Just search Brett Colvin, you'll find me. And then, yeah, if you want to check out what Goodlawyer is all about, goodlawyer.ca. And then the final thing I'll mention is, if there are any lawyers or law curious folks out there, we're also bringing back our Future of Law Summit in November. It's virtual, it's free. We got Guy Kawasaki as our keynote speaker, and that you can find at summit.goodlawyer.ca.
Perfect. We're going to have, this show's coming out after that, but I will make sure that we have a link. Yeah, I'll make sure that we have a link, because I'm going to be releasing a clip from this show. So I'll make sure that we have a link with that ahead of it, just so that we get it.
Sounds good, brother.
Awesome, Brett. Thank you for joining us today. This has been amazing. You've been listening to episode 214 of the Business Development Podcast, and we will catch you on the flip side.
This has been the Business Development Podcast with Kelly Kennedy. Kelly has 15 years in sales and business development experience within the Alberta oil and gas industry and founded his own business development firm in 2020. His passion and his specialization is in customer relationship generation and business development. The show is brought to you by Capital Business Development, your business development specialists. For more, we invite you to the website at www.capitalbd.ca. See you next time on the Business Development Podcast.
Hey, rock stars, are you ready to master the art of business development and finally achieve the results you've been chasing? Hi, I'm Kelly Kennedy, host of the Business Development Podcast, and I want to invite you to the Business Development Mastery Program, a transformative journey designed to help you level up, stand out, and succeed. This program goes beyond the basics. You'll learn how to craft marketing materials that sell, create ideal customer profiles, and build target lists that deliver results. But that's just the start. You'll also discover the secrets to personal branding so that you're not just another voice in the crowd, and learn how to use social media strategies to position yourself as a trusted expert in your field. It's about building relationships, driving action, and achieving measurable growth. The truth is, business development isn't guesswork, it's a system, and I'll show you how to make it work for you. Let's get started. Book your discovery call now at capitalbd.ca or connect with me directly on LinkedIn and send me a DM. Your next big win is waiting.